Hey, my name is Joe,
And I'm Mary Beth.
and this is the best of Gen X.
We are in our 40s.
And we're siblings,
We'll talk about adulting in a world so different from the one we grew up in,
so excuse us while we save a generation.
one episode at a time.
Let's go.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Mary Beth.
How are you?
Oh, not too bad. How are you?
Well, I have to say, it was much better when I walked in the door.
Tell me why.
Well, you had created this ambiance. And it took me quite by surprise. I heard a little bing on the old Victrola,
Yes.
and I saw an enormous Christmas tree in your living room.
Yes. I do have my Christmas tree up
It's,
on October 13th. Well, what is today? Is today the 14th?
oh,
No, 13th. I do have it up on the 13th.
look, I couldn't have been happier to see it. And you have a really high ceiling, so it's a massive tree.
Yeah, I just got that yesterday, in fact. Do you want
Now-
to know why?
Tell me why.
So-
I mean, personally, no one needs to justify an early Christmas tree, but go ahead.
Yeah, and not only do I have that, but I have the Christmas decorations on the TV stand already. So my daughter is graduating midterm, and her party is going to be right after Halloween. And naturally, we decorate for Christmas right after Halloween.
Exactly.
So she said, light bulb went off. If we're going to put the tree up right after Halloween anyway, and my party's right after Halloween, then let's just make it a Christmas theme in the house.
Awesome.
And I said, you don't have to twist my arm.
I know.
You had me at hello.
You even have the big flat screen TV with the fire crackling.
Yes. So when you walked in, I had to make sure it was all kind of ready and made you kind of get that feeling of
Oh, I got the feeling.
chestnuts roasting.
And I don't know if you saw the weather report, but
Supposed to be chilly tomorrow.
this week
Yeah.
we're going to have a little, probably below normal temps.
I'm all about it.
I am too, man. I'm so ready.
Yeah. So I'm living it up in here. I'm already ready for Christmas.
Same, man. Same. All the haters out there can be like, what about Thanksgiving?
Yeah. They
Look.
can go kick rocks. Thanksgiving's literally one day you eat a meal, you're done, you're miserable.
Yeah, nothing against Thanksgiving. In fact, I just kind of think that that's all part of it.
It is. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm glad you liked it because you walked in and it was like a genuine facial response. It was like, I felt like you had just stepped into Santa's like workshop or something. It was awesome.
It was as if I was Sheldon Cooper and I said, here's my jaw, drop it.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah. It's all about the presentation. So I had the fire crackling on the screen. I had the Bing Crosby on the record player. Yep. Just giving you
Beautiful.
a sign of what's to come soon.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what you do at the place.
Right.
Well, that's exciting. I would have to agree that celebrating Christmas right after, starting the season right after Halloween is the thing that everybody should be doing.
Yeah. I mean, they call it the season.
I mean, what we're talking about is a universal truth, Joe.
I see what you did there.
Would you agree with me, Joe?
Would you agree with me, Joe? I would, Robert.
Yes, you would. That was your decision, not mine.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, that was my terrible impression of James Spader as Robert California, the new manager of Dunder Mifflin.
The new manager. So we have entered the post-Michael Scott era.
Yeah. We could say a little something about Michael's send-off because I don't think we really touched on that last episode, but I have to say I quite like how they chose to do it.
Why is that?
Well, I liked seeing him in the airport taking off the mic pack and such, and I liked the fact that Pam made it there just in time and that his last moment was with Pam. I think he had the closest relationship with Pam. Like, he and Dwight got closer and closer as as buddies, but Pam and Michael had a special relationship. And so to see that private moment that wasn't mic'd was pretty special.
And that was actually real. You know that, right? You've heard on the other Office podcasts. That was actually a real, genuine send off to each other.
Yes.
Like they were actually saying real things.
Goodbye to each other.
Jenna was talking to Steve.
Yes.
You know.
And just she's there at the window watching the plane take off. I mean, it tugs at your heart in a big, big way. Mm-hmm. I also love how they chose to surprise him for the last Dundies when they went back to the office and surprised him with that song. First of all, I love Rent. So that song is
9,986,000.
Oh my gosh. It's
we
perfect.
actually sat down and did the math.
And he looked genuinely surprised, and I think that's because didn't they say
they
that
said he was?
He was
because he knew something was coming, but he didn't know that.
Yeah,
and so that was a genuine response to it,
and you could feel that. And so one of my favorite parts, because in the office, there's always, not far behind the tender moments, there's what do they call it? A break in that tension with a funny line. And so it goes back to his talking head where he says, yeah, okay. Well, this is going to hurt like a motherfucker.
Yeah. No, that was a good.
Yeah. I really appreciated that. And, but what do you think?
I liked it as well. Obviously you want him to stay, but I think the way they wrote it was pretty good. Going to Colorado with Holly. Obviously, you like that they ended up together because it just made sense and they were perfect for each other. She was like the female version of him, we said. So I like how they did that with her. I really, really liked the way they did the goodbye with Jim and Michael in Michael's office.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good. It was just enough emotion to be like, wow, Jim can't even hold it together. But then it was kind of funny at the same time.
Sure.
And, I don't know. I just thought the way they did that was really well done.
Did you get a sense? One thing I love about his sort of his effort to visit and say goodbye in his own way to everyone in the office, where he gives each person some kind of gift or whatever. Mm-hmm. I loved that they did that. And one of the things that I enjoyed was seeing him laugh in his talking head after giving Oscar that, terrible stuffed, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And
he just accepted it.
He has the least respect for me.
Yeah, he said he has the lowest opinion of anybody in the office.
And that was a chance, just a quick moment, but a chance to show Michael's growth, because he was able to, because Michael was someone who always had to be liked. But as he fell deeply in love with Holly, that so much of that void was filled. And so I really like that about him acknowledging that here's Oscar, he does not respect me, and he's getting a kick out of it.
Yeah.
So there's something that happens when someone really fills that spot in your life where you don't need everyone's approval.
Yeah.
So that was a fun moment.
The growth of Michael Scott, I think, is a testament, like the way they wrote that, because I think when he first started out, his character in the show, it was so cringy that it was almost like he was a character prop.
Caricature.
Something like that. And then, obviously Jim and Dwight and Pam kind of like kept the show together, but Michael was so like unliked at first, but then they just started building his character to where he had a more human side to him, and there was some vulnerability, and everybody started respecting him a little bit more. He definitely grew.
Yes.
So I like the fact that he grew enough to be self-aware and understand kind of what his place is.
And you're right. If they hadn't done that, if he had just stayed the same goofy, cringy
I don't think
Michael,
it would have worked.
Well, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have rang true for anybody, because people aren't like that. We do grow. We evolve.
And that's why I said that I feel like the other three main characters kind of held it together, with Michael kind of being cringy off to the side. And so that was just my take on it. But I do like how they sent him off. Speaking of, can I apologize to the listeners for once?
Okay.
Really quick.
I know what you're going to say.
I am never, ever allowed again, if we ever do a show, like an episode where we talk about a show, I am never allowed. Don't let me ever be in charge of the character overviews. And here's why. So we do the Saved by the Bell episode. I forget AC Slater, basically my favorite character, right?
Yes.
Because we dedicated a section to it, right?
Yes.
Or we had already referenced him 2 or 3 times. So this character of Michael Scott in The Office was the only character I did not mention in the character overview, the main character of the show, because we had our next like section was all dedicated to Michael Scott.
Right.
It was like cringiest moments, and so in my mind I'm thinking we're already talking about him.
Exactly.
So I mentioned all the other characters that meant something, and I forgot to mention Michael Scott specifically. Steve Carell as Michael Scott. I'm not allowed to do it. Don't let me.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
And then I said Randy Gervais, and one of our friends.
Yeah, but we heard it in the moment. We fixed
We
it.
did, but you know how it is, like when you're in the moment,
Yeah.
and your mind is like, my mind was in like a million different places.
Sure.
I don't know why I said Randy. I was just thinking of somebody else maybe. I knew it was Ricky Gervais. Hell, I was telling the whole backstory, the origin of the whole show without any notes because
Right.
I knew it. Randy just came out. It's almost like when Toby said, I'm Tony.
Yeah.
And I just said Randy. Well, one of our friends, your best friend, tells me at her house when I went to go visit her and her husband that one of her coworkers at her physical therapist office listened to the show and said, I don't know if I'm going to I don't know if any of that show holds weight or those people hold weight because the dude called him Randy Gervais. I was like, oh my Lord.
We fixed it immediately.
I said, we fixed it on site. Give me a break.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but he was joking.
Oh,
Obviously,
okay.
But he listened to the rest of it.
Oh, good deal. Well, hey, if you're listening,
Sorry about that.
sorry.
I'll be better. But anyway, I mean, you mentioned Robert California.
Yeah,
James
because
Spader.
right after Michael leaves, there's the heavy task of filling his spot.
Nearly impossible task.
Yes.
And so, speaking of Robert California, we got an email
Okay.
from a listener. His name is Nate, and he's from Chicago.
Hello, Nate from
Go-
Chicago.
Go Cubs. So Nate,
Chicago.
Yeah, Nate writes an email and says, "Hey, I really love your show, and I'm a huge fan of the show The Office." And he says, I want to know your thoughts on the Robert California era of The Office. I wasn't a huge fan, but I want to know what your guys' take was on Robert California. I thought that was a very good question.
Good
I think it's a
question.
question the entire internet asks
Yes.
and talks about. What was the reception of that from you and I, and
Right.
from kind of, The Office
We're
universe?
we're about to get there.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about some of the cameos.
Okay.
So they go through, I think it was the last couple episodes of season 7.
It was like the search committee.
Search committee.
Mm-hmm.
Dwight desperately wants to be chosen. He's not going to. He's not ready. I loved that they brought in Jim Carrey, Ray Romano,
Will Arnett, Warren Buffett.
Those were good ones. I really enjoyed also Kelly's interview.
Mm-hmm.
That's, it's one of those Kelly at her finest. I mean, Mindy Kaling is some kind of talent.
Didn't they say something to her like, aren't you just a one-person department? She goes, I am not easy to manage.
She's talking about her experience in managing her department. And Jim says, aren't you a one-person department? She's like, yes, but I am not easy to manage. Or my favorite part is, what would you say are your greatest weaknesses? I don't have any, asshole.
Right.
So funny.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those episodes.
Oh, my gosh.
I thought Will Arnett was really funny, too. I'm a huge fan of his anyway.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah.
And poor Ray Romano didn't do well in his interview because he let Robert California get in his head.
Mm-hmm.
But they ultimately did land on Robert California. But we find out in the opening of the next season that Robert California arrives in Scranton, takes a look around.
Takes one look around, sees Phyllis cough, and he's like, I'm out.
Drives to Florida, talks to the CEO, who's played by Kathy Bates.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she did fantastic.
Yep.
I really enjoyed her presence on the show.
Joe Bennett.
Talks her out of her own job and becomes CEO of Sabre. CEO.
He talked her out of her own job. And I'm not sure how you do that. Great talking head.
And so he landed on Andy as the manager.
Can you believe it?
So funny. I love that
Andy
moment.
Bernard becomes the new manager.
Andy Bernard. I think there's a line Robert California says, there's something about
The unexceptional.
Everyone, well, what does he say? There's something good about an underdog to the unexceptional.
Something like that.
I should have written it down.
Yeah, something
Shame
like that.
on me.
You're on the right track.
Shame on me. I should have written it down, but I only noted the quotes that were most important to me. But let's talk about Robert California. James Spader. I want to know, Are we such fans of this decision because he's like one of the poster guys of Gen X as far as film? James Spader is definitely a Gen X icon.
Yes. Are you asking me now directly, or?
I'm sort of throwing it out to the universe.
Well, I hadn't seen Spader in anything really since the 80s.
Right.
So while I recognized him when I first went through the series, I'm like, oh, that's the same guy, you know, that was on such and whatever, XYZ. So I didn't really know what to expect out of that character, but I personally loved it. I loved James Spader in The Office.
I did too.
I thought it was the perfect hire for what we were kind of feeling with Steve Carell's exit as Michael Scott. Like, I needed something. I knew what I was going to get out of Dwight, Jim, and Pam, but I needed that little extra something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To hold it together. So, yeah, I really liked James Spader's piece of the show.
I did too. And you know, when I talked about what made me ultimately watch The Office, the kid Brian who got me interested in it, I remember talking to him after I'd seen the whole series, and I was talking about, I guess, Robert California in that season, and he said, you know, that was his least favorite season. Of course, he's quite a bit younger, and at the time, I thought, well, if you knew who James Spader was going in, you might feel differently. But, you know, when I think about it, he hadn't really done much comedy of note. I sometimes have to remind myself that he was in Mannequin, which was one of my favorite movies growing up.
That's one of them I was thinking
But
of too.
that character is so against type for him that it's hard to remember that that's him. But other than that, it's just not a role you see him in, you know, that kind of comedic role. And honestly, I've listened to many criticisms of that character and James Spader as that choice for that character. And everyone who's doing the criticizing is measuring him up to Michael Scott.
You can't do that.
And I think that's wrong.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
I think you can't do that. Look, if they had replaced Michael Scott, if they had replaced Steve Carell with an imitation Steve Carell, if they had put Bob Odenkirk, he would have been great, but it would have
been an imitation.
It would have been an imitation,
Yeah.
and they would have been trying to recreate the magic of this other actor, because every actor is going to bring their own.
It's a little derivative. It's a little derivative.
Of what exactly? What are you referencing?
Yeah.
And so I think that if your beef with James Spader being cast in the show after Michael Scott, if your beef is that he wasn't funny or that he was not as funny as Michael Scott's character, then I think you're missing the whole point. I think the comedy after Steve Carell comes from the contrast between Robert California and the rest of the cast. These characters are reacting to this very different guy, eclectic, very mysterious and intimidating. And so their responses to him are what makes it funny. And he's funny.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was going to say. Was I think it was perfect because Robert California and Michael Scott are the complete opposite.
Exactly.
So, like, to your point about the Bob Odenkirk, if they would have just put him in there, it wouldn't have worked. But Michael Scott and Robert are two totally on the complete opposite of the spectrum.
Exactly.
So I think that's why it worked. It's like, okay, we did this for 7 years of the show. We're going to do this time. To your point, it kind of makes the supporting cast react and act differently because he's so different. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think it works perfectly because they are so opposite. And
because of everything that goes down under his leadership, these characters have many opportunities to grow up, you know. So he's not there in Scranton 24/7. Andy's in charge, and Andy's been their friend for years. And they really have a good thing going there for a stretch. Andy's a great manager, and we'll talk about his trajectory.
Yeah, he's able to like rally the troops and all that kind of stuff.
But I just thought that James Spader brought something so special and so different that it allowed the other comedic actors to shine.
Yeah. It was his aura, his tone of his voice, his pace of his delivery of the lines and stuff. It was just so good.
I mean, to go from a boss they did not take seriously to a boss that intimidated the hell out of them.
Yeah, they had to because they were scared of him.
I thought that was great.
It's like Michael Scott's was always real hyperactive, and you could tell he was kind of immature, and Robert California's the complete opposite.
Complete.
You know,
so the more I rewatch, the more I love season 8.
Yeah.
Because of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're on the internet, I think the reception on The Office was of his James Spader's role as as Robert California. I think it was generally positive, but you know, some fans considered him one of the best guest stars on the show. He kind of started off, as we know, in that one-off appearance, and then became a recurring character. But for the most part, I think they appreciated his, you know, little manipulative schemes and his monologues. You know,
Yes.
I think which were kind of similar. If you watch anything of James Spader's, like I went back since he was on The Office, I went back and watched some of his stuff just to see it. But I think it's kind of similar to his character in that show Reddington. So it's kind of similar in that respect.
Reddington.
Yeah, there's a show that he's in called Reddington.
Are you talking about Blacklist?
I thought he was in a show called Reddington.
I thought his name was Reddington in that. It's been too long.
That might be it. That might be what I'm thinking of. It's been forever since I've seen Blacklist.
Well, Blacklist is awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, but I think the reception was generally positive. Now you're going to see some articles or people talking on Reddit that are like, "Oh, I hated it. It was awful."
Well, I challenge anyone to make a fair criticism of James Spader as a choice without mentioning Steve Carell or Michael Scott.
Right, and I think that's what the negative comments were more about. It's like they were traditional Office fans, and it was almost impure.
Did the show have a different feel? Of course.
Yeah.
But I think that was inevitable.
But still, Jim and Pam and Dwight were able to hold it together.
Yeah.
And Andy, obviously, because he was there for...
Yeah, and I think, and I mentioned, I think in the last episode, that it's really telling of, for a show of this caliber to let go of their star and still, you know, draw in audiences week after week. And I wanted to say one more thing about James Spader being cast. There is something so unique about his acting style, and I think that his humor in this series comes a lot of the time from his delivery on such ordinary lines. It's as if, and think about this next time you watch, and I think you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's as if he goes through his script and blacks out all punctuation. It's like he puts a spin on, like he ignores periods, which is hilarious. Just the rhythm of his talking is so good. And it's one of the things I think that no matter what the scene or what he's saying or what you can't take your eyes off of him. He's got this charisma.
Magnetic.
Yeah. So that to me, it makes it fun to rewatch because I feel like he is so nuanced that you catch something new each time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the other characters are so used to like humor and like being silly in The Office, and he's just not that way. Like you can't just be silly with him. Even when you try to be, he turns it into something serious. It's like,
and I love how he laughs in the middle of a line that's not supposed to be funny and makes it funny.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought it was excellent. And to answer your question, Nate, yes, we did enjoy that season.
We absolutely enjoyed
it. And in fact, we're going to finish up the first half here talking about our favorite Robert California moments.
Okay.
This could be lines, it could be episodes or scenes. Why don't you go first?
First one that jumps out at me is probably the Halloween episode where he does that big monologue at the end.
Yeah.
I'm fine, bitch, and his kid starts laughing. And everybody's facial expression's like, what did I just listen to? I always laugh when I see that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I share your enthusiasm for that particular episode. A few of the quotes that I love the most are from that episode. So I love when he's going around and asking everybody very pointed, very intense questions. And then it cuts to his talking head and he says, "What am I up to?" And that's just, How do you not love that? Yeah. He's having fun with these people in his own twisted way. And I do love the quote at the end of the episode when he says, "Fear plays an interesting role in our lives. How dare we let it motivate us? How dare we let it into our decision-making, into our livelihoods, into our relationships?" It's funny, isn't it? We take a day a year to dress up in costume and celebrate fear. So it's just his way of kind of putting a mirror up to everyone and playing on their worst fears. And I just love that episode. It's just perfection to me.
Yeah, those are some good ones. Why is Jim treating the magician so poorly?
That's another
That's one
one.
of my favorite. That's one of my favorite ones.
That's another one. Really, Nellie, $9.50. I can't do it. You can do it better than me.
No, that was actually pretty good.
But I've heard you say it before. It's funny.
Yeah.
Are you gonna try?
No, not on the spot.
Come on.
Really, Nellie? $9.50. Jim, Dwight, take the day.
I love it. Take the day.
Let's help Nellie.
Because, when Nellie comes onto the scene, we see a different side of Robert California. I don't need to say his whole name, I guess, but it doesn't seem right if I don't.
Right.
But we see a different side of him where I guess she helps reveal the vulnerable part of him, which is he's very sexual. Mm-hmm. And I just said sexual.
Sexual.
Grandma Doris and I used to joke about it and that's how we would say it. So, but yeah, he's a very sexually charged human. And so when this woman is stirring that part of him, he is less inclined to make tough decisions, right? So he says to Jim, "Sometimes the flowers arrange themselves."
Yeah, right.
So when Nellie takes over after Andy leaves for a bit, he doesn't do anything about it. He wants Andy to come back at first, but
Right.
But I love that we see him not being able to handle that situation,
yeah.
and it's all because she's a woman.
I recuse myself until I've had a chance to make love. He goes, "How are you adjusting to life in Scranton so far?"
Just love it. I love it.
Even I don't want to be here. That's why I'm always my place in Scranton.
I love his interview, obviously.
Oh yeah, that's
that whole part. And we've already quoted it. I did my poor imitation.
But I also
of it.
love how Toby, Jim, and Gabe react to it.
Right.
It's perfect how they react to it. They're frozen.
They're scared of it. And in an earlier episode of the season, once he's hired, what does Jim say that he takes? He does a walkabout.
Little look-arounds or whatever he says.
He does a walkabout and has these and zeroes in on someone to have this really intense conversation.
Yeah.
And you can see Aaron, and she's coming
like,
toward her.
Here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Well, I woke up." And he goes, "You don't
Aaron, describe your day so far."
So I enjoyed the interview and the way that he cocks his head to the side looking at the camera after he scares them to death. Mm-hmm. I think you might be a little overqualified for this job. Do I
look like someone that would waste my own time?
Any others?
Of course, the house party episode's pretty good. What does he say? He goes, "This isn't just a party," or does he say something? What is
This isn't a get together.
Yeah,
this is
something
a party.
like that. When everybody's swimming and he skinny dips in there, but he gives them the tour and shows them the wine cellar and starts talking about a leg of mutton with the juices dripping down my bare chest. And Jim's like, "What?"
I have to say, I don't know if you noticed. Have you ever noticed the music that's playing when he steps into the pool area and notices that a party's been happening the whole time?
You'll have to explain it to me. I remember the music playing when him and Gabe and Ryan were dancing in his movie theater room, but I don't remember the...
Well, next time you watch, I pick up on the very 80s vibe of the music that's playing. It's a nothing song, like, it's not a well-known song or anything, but it's got a very 80s feel. And it just, I don't know, to me it's sort of a nod to who he is as an 80s icon. And so I just wondered if you ever noticed that.
I didn't, but I'm going to pay more attention to it
Pay
now.
attention next time when he's at the pool and he starts stripping his clothes off, and it's like, this is James Spader music for sure.
Yeah, but then I like the line where he talks about getting basically to use his house until the staging company at Remax gets a hold of it. I like that part too.
Does my misery amuse you, Jim? Let's see. Oh, of course, we have to talk about the moment where he is very out of character, bursts into the office, bangs on Andy's window, and says, "In 4 seconds, my wife's going to be coming through that door asking for a job.
Under no circumstances are you to hire."
Under no circumstances can that be allowed to happen.
Yeah.
And he is sending very mixed signals to Andy. And she eventually picks up on it. She's like, it looks like he doesn't know what's expected of him. And he's like, just be honest, Andy. And he tells her what happened. And he goes, you lying son of a bitch.
Or I like when he looks at her and smiles, and he looks over at Andy, and he makes that face to Andy like, you goddamn.
Yes.
I told you not to hire her.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I have one more.
Okay.
Okay, so this is also from the Halloween episode, but I love it so much because it encompasses Robert California in one short sentence. It's when Andy and Aaron are in Andy's office talking about the future of their relationship or the nature of it, and because she likes him and he's not feeling it, and Robert California is in the room. And at one point, Andy goes, I'm sorry, this must be really uncomfortable for you. And James Spader goes, I'm never uncomfortable. And I just lose it. Every time it makes me LOL, because that is exactly who he is.
Yeah.
That is who he is.
His character always quietly evaluates other people and their personalities.
And nothing's off limits.
Right.
Literally nothing's off limits.
Yeah. It's like when he saw Dwight in the cafe corner or whatever they called it, Dwight's Cafe or whatever, downstairs, and he just quietly looks at Dwight, and Dwight's like, what are you looking at? And he's like, he's just evaluating him. He's not even saying anything.
Right.
He's just looking at him. I figured you out. No, you haven't figured me out. I was like, I'm done. Too late.
And, I relate to that side of James Spader. I'm never uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of that way too.
I saw how they made paper once on Sesame Street.
Oh, do we have any final thoughts on Robert California before we take a break?
I do not. No, I don't think so. I think we covered it.
Okay, cool. Just want to remind you guys to send us a text. You can click on the link just above show notes on our webpage, and you can also email us at thebestofgenx@gmail.com. In the next part, we're just going to cover our favorite moments from the final 2 seasons. Things that make us laugh out loud still, and some of the storylines with our favorite characters. So stick around.
We'll be back. And Mary Beth, we are back. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about really quick were the show's ratings.
Yeah, because I wondered.
Specifically, what happens after Steve Carell leaves and there's no Michael Scott? Does that bring ratings down, then back up?
Michael Scott is The Office, and what happens when he leaves?
What's the fans' reaction to that just from a viewing standpoint?
Yeah, since neither of us watched it in real time.
Right. So, as you know, I just didn't start watching until COVID. But basically, as we probably would expect, the ratings did drop double digits right after he left. If you look at some stuff on the internet, it was kind of already on a slight decline around season 6 before he left. But when you compare season over season, first season was a short season, as we know. It was 6 episodes. I think there was about 5.4 on average million viewers, right? But then season 2, 3, it started getting into the 8+ million viewership, viewer counts. Where they hit their peak was season 5. There was on average over 9 million people watching. But then it started slowly declining. And in season 8 and 9, it was, other than season 1, was the lowest. As you could probably imagine. But again, there's some obviously good moments in there. but it went from season 7 when Steve Carell left. There was on average a little under 8 million viewers, and then it went down to 6.5, and then in season 9 it went down to 5. This is average, right? So like certainly finales might have more, viewers watching them, but just you can kind of just see how it started, ramped up really heavy. Season 5 was at its peak, and then it just kind of slowly. Now season 6 and 7, like I said, were over 8, so it wasn't bad.
Yeah, right.
But 8 and 9, you can really see that sharp decline in the ratings.
What about the finale? Do we know?
Yeah, so the actual finale. Well, before I even get into the finale, you're talking about the series finale. Yeah, so let's first talk season 8.
Okay.
So season 8's finale was the lowest finale for The Office, which was the episode Free Family Portrait Studio. I was kind of surprised by that.
That was a good one.
I agree. But the actual final series finale had 5.6 million viewers. So again, season 1 on average was about 5.5. Then it started steadily staying on average around 8 plus. Season 5 was 9 million, but the last episode was 5.69 million.
So clearly,
which was above average for that season. The season was only like at 5.06. So it was above average for the season, but it was still pretty low. I mean, if you think about it.
But clearly, the viewership dropped off after Steve Carell left.
It did.
Some people just couldn't hang.
They couldn't hang.
Because it's an emotional thing. You've invested and you love these people, these characters, and with that kind of shift, and it was a seismic shift. However, you're right. There's certainly so much to love about seasons 8 and 9. And in fact, I enjoy some. I mean, they're 2 of my favorite seasons, honestly.
Well, can I give you my take?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. There were some people that obviously in the drop, there were some people that just didn't want to give it a chance.
Yeah.
With Steve Carell gone, they just did not want to give it a chance.
And now that it's streaming, I would love to see the analytics.
Yeah, exactly. I would totally agree. So my take on both seasons is I felt like in some cases the plot was kind of all over the place. I felt like some storylines would start and stop without any warning. But that said, I think they do a relatively consistent job with like good moments.
Oh, yes.
Do you know what I mean? So,
yes.
So yeah, I'd say watch them. If I'm giving my opinion, I would tell people that maybe aren't giving them a chance or are new to the show, watch those seasons. Don't give up on those seasons. I don't think it's worth getting hung up too much on the flaws or taking it too seriously. And you can just kind of go, like I said, on a moment to moment basis with those seasons because there are some really good moments. The good parts, in my opinion, aren't infrequent enough to make them not worth seeing.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take on both seasons is there's great moments in them.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it allows for several other characters to become true leaders, to let their own natural leadership ability, shine. So, okay. Well, first I wanted to just touch upon Andy's trajectory as a character. I don't know. He
had one of the wildest character trajectories in the whole show.
Did.
Maybe the most.
Yeah, I mean, he started off from the other branch, and he was kind of annoying.
He's a little immature, just kind of a kiss ass to Josh and the branch manager there
and
at
then
Stanford.
Kiss ass to Michael Scott.
Right, and then a yes man to Michael Scott.
Gets sent to anger management, and then starts dating Angela, and then there's that whole Dwight, Angela, Andy love triangle, which I thought was really fun. And I have to say though, at a certain point, you love Andy and then you hate him.
But then you kind of come back around.
You kind of come back around. I think there's some redemption there for him because he really goes like when he's first manager, he does a really good job and they really do like him as manager. But then, I don't know, I would say the turn came when he leaves to go pick up Erin in Florida. Erin decides she's going to stay in Florida. He goes and makes this big romantic gesture to go get her. But in doing that, Nellie takes over. Nellie's another character that I didn't like at first, but the more I've rewatched, the more I love her. So at first, I remember first watching it and really being angry when Andy got back and didn't get his spot back. Like she just came in and took over. It really made me, I was pissed. But But then when he got it back, he became like a mutation of his earlier immature kind of dude. And I think things turned when he got fired and then was at the silent auction. And he's like, which camera do I look at? It's just
been so long.
long.
It's been like a week.
I'm like, ugh, Andy. And he's clearly having a breakdown.
Yeah, you're being a jabroni.
Quit being a Thomas Organ.
She's right. You're being a jabroni.
So his behavior at the silent auction kind of annoyed me. But then when he gets his position back shortly thereafter, he's a real dick, especially to Nellie. He's dating Erin, but he's not the best boyfriend. Mm-hmm. He's not really invested in her. And then finally, I was finally kind of done with Andy. Here Comes Trouble, the Halloween episode of season 9. Like,
I have that to talk about.
Okay, talk about it.
Well, no, it was just in one of my funny moments of
okay.
those seasons, so we can hold on it.
Okay, so that for me, when he got so upset about Broccoli Rob, I just thought, you are such a child, and you can and you can even see it in Erin. Like, it's starting
She's
to
like,
happen. She's starting to really become grossed out of with him as a person. Someone who relies on his parents' money and their notoriety that's not even the right word, but
yeah, their status.
Their status. Thank you.
They led a foundation at his former university, Cornell.
Ever
which
heard
always
of it?
Always tells us about. But then they end up being broke. The dad runs off with some young woman, and
yeah,
he has to sell the boat and all that
so
stuff.
selling the boat and then
Just leaving her
there.
I didn't even realize
she's like,
it's a big deal.
Would I have loved to have gone on this whirlwind trip around the world? Yes, I think that would have been really romantic. But instead, it's him and his drunk brother, who is Josh Groban, by the way.
Groban, yeah.
Great choice for his brother. And so he's just gone. And again, this gives the other characters a chance to be leaders. And I love that stretch of episodes when Andy's actually gone for 3 months, because they don't, what does Jim say? Like, turns out you don't need a manager to babysit you.
Yeah, we just do our job.
And they had their best quarter when he wasn't there. And so I kind of enjoyed like the moments when they are checking off the list of cliches that Phyllis says every time it rains, and he's going to promise them hot chocolates and just things like that. I thought were really fun. And by that point, I thought Andy was just, and I was ready for Erin and Pete.
Plop.
I thought they were a great relationship, much better.
Yeah, but I have an opinion on that, and we can get into it later or now. Just
let's do it.
I don't think there was much, like, they kind of left that open. Like, I'm sure we'll get into the last couple episodes, but it's like they got together when Andy was gone, and then it was kind of like, yeah, that couple episodes where they were like kind of sort of with each other, but then at the end it was like there was no closure on what they were,
exactly
what they actually were.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I see why you wanted to save it, because we were going to do the finale.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was Tallahassee.
Okay. Interesting part of the series.
Very interesting. Quite a jump, because now they have to go to Florida for 6 weeks to open up this new store.
Was it 6 weeks? I thought it was 3 weeks.
I thought it was longer than that, but
anyway, they're away for a little bit. They're away for a little bit.
Some listeners are going to get very upset that we don't have, all these little details already.
Sorry.
But so Jim and Dwight and a few others go down there. Before the trip, they set up the storyline of Kathy, who is Pam's replacement while she goes on maternity leave for baby number 2. They set up the story that she's going to be making a move on Jim, which was a little scary watching that. She's talking to a friend on the phone. She's like, oh, yeah.
Like, what else is there to do?
Yeah, of course we will. What else? That marriage is not good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to flick Kathy off the
Right.
screen.
It's like why is she even still there? Like,
I know.
Pam's back.
Right.
Why is she even still there?
That didn't make sense.
No.
But I do want to talk about, starting with Tallahassee, some of the moments that still make me laugh so hard. first of all, Jim's hotel prank in the cold open. Mm-hmm. So Dwight is waking everyone up, and he's got this meticulous schedule. They finally walk into Jim's room, and Jim has just told the camera, I'm a
I'm
dad.
on the two baby schedule.
So I've been up for a couple hours, and I couldn't think of anything to do. And then I came up with something. And so he hides in the closet. Dwight and Aaron come in and see a briefcase opened full of cash.
The bed covering is all tied up to the balcony.
As if someone climbed out, escaped, or hung themselves.
There's blood-stained words on the door.
And it says, Dwight did it. Meet, what's-her-face, some stripper-like name.
Right.
At the alcohol club.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Jim.
And they get more and more scared as they're taking it all in. And then suddenly Jim falls out of the closet.
Yeah,
as if he's dead.
That was really good.
I laughed so damn hard.
Yeah, that was really, really good.
One of my favorite Jim pranks. What about you? Anything from Tallahassee?
It was cool to see Stanley's character get a little bit more exposure, I guess.
And different.
Florida Stanley.
Yeah,
he's wearing like what's the hat? What do they call it?
Panama Jack.
Yeah, like the fedora looking Panama Jack. He's got the convertible. He's like, "You want to ride, Jim?" And he's like, "Put on Loggins or whatever." He's like, "Loggins and Messina." He goes, Did I say Messina?" And then he drives off. He speeds off. But yeah, he's like, "You have no idea how to vacation, Jim."
And Jim's wondering if he could even,
keep up with him.
if he could even keep up with Stanley.
Florida Stanley's a little different. He parks next to the women at the red stoplight, and wants basically trying to hit on them a little bit, talking about going out and dancing and stuff. And so you see a little bit of different side of Stanley. I liked that. But I actually think, to get serious for a second, I think it was really the turning point to where you started noticing where Jim and Dwight's relationship changed.
Excellent point.
Because Jim is trying to not let Dwight get into a sticky situation where he's going to get fired, because Robert California says he's going to ix the Sabre store.
So Robert California confides in Jim on the golf course. Bravo, Dwight. Very good. And says,
Shame.
This is not going to be his day. And so he decides that he needs to tell him. He doesn't get the words out. Pam on the phone insists that he goes back. And I was going to say the same thing. I got teared up, as funny as it is, because he goes back and they have this. I mean, he is physically trying to keep him from walking in that room because he knows if he does, he's going to get fired.
And then Dwight runs up on the wall. He's trying to do these karate moves to get around him.
And then he revs like a bull.
So
he goes,
funny.
"Are you seriously revving right now?"
I laugh every time I watch that
And they're
scene.
knocking each other over. And then Jim covers Dwight's mouth, and he goes, "Ew, God, where do you get all this saliva?" And he goes, "All I have to do is think about pie, and then my salivary glands do the rest." And so there's a moment when Dwight comes out of that room, because he kind of peeked in a little bit and heard Packer get fired
Todd
instead,
Packer,
because Packer took his place. And so when he comes out, he doesn't say a word. There's that just look between the two of them, and he helps Jim off the floor, and they just walk away. And I get choked up when I see that, because it is a turning point in their relationship.
Yeah, I like when he's in the shuttle and Stanley's just looking out the window pissed off, and Jim's talking to Pam. He's like, even Stanley can back me up and goes, "Don't talk to me.
Leave me alone, damn it."
Yeah, he's pissed he has to go back home.
But still, I think probably the funniest part from all of the Florida episodes for me is the bed bug. So Jim is trying to get Kathy out of his room because she is trying to put the moves on him, and it's so transparent. Oh my God. So Jim tells Dwight that he has bed bugs, and Dwight doesn't want bed bugs because if it's in Jim's room, it's everywhere, and he cannot bring that back to Schrute Farms. So he goes in there, and he's asking him, he goes, "After it bit you, did it run away fearful, or did it walk away smug, self-assured?" So smug. Like he thought it was funny. And Jim does this walk, like this strut with his chest out. And Dwight says, "That's a bed bug. Everything's a joke." And I lose it.
Yeah.
I lose it every time. That is so damn funny.
He strips and gets in the bed. And he's
Oh
like,
my God.
"Let me down.
Cover me.
Yeah, cover me."
It's great.
I love when Kathy walks in there for the first time and she goes, "Oh, is this March Madness?" And Jim goes, "No, that's in March."
March, yeah. Idiot. And she's like, oh, she's so annoying.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, that was a really good part.
Okay. Another episode that I really enjoy from the last season, Staremageddon.
Okay, so this is the one where the elevator stops working, right?
Yes, and so Dwight's sign, usually you see sorry for the inconveniences.
I did say it was going to be an inconvenience.
No, the sign actually says, this will be an inconvenience.
Right.
Kind of like, it is your birthday. And so the larger people in the office have a really hard time going up all those stairs. And but he has to get Stanley out on this
Sales
sale
call with him and Clark.
because the woman that they're going to be talking to is best friends with Stanley's sister, so he really wants Stanley to be there. And so Dwight kind of gets Clark's help in getting Stanley down there. He shoots him with darts.
It's like a bull tranquilizer.
Bull tranquilizer. And he's like, shoots 4 of them into him before Stanley falls.
Yeah, Clark goes, wasn't that enough to, like, someone twice his size?
Like, is he going to be all right? He's like, it's meant for a small bull.
Right.
And he's like, you used 4 of them. Anyway, so he's not moving. They can't, it's just dead weight. So to get Stanley out of the office and down the stairs, they pad all the stairs with cardboard so that you can slide down them so that he doesn't get his suit wrinkled. He's all wrapped. They wrap Stanley entirely in bubble wrap and then put a helmet on him.
Yeah, it was like an Evil Knievel helmet.
Exactly. It was like an Evil Knievel event trying to get him down. And it's so funny to me. And then not only is this happening, but Dwight keeps using references about body parts that you'd use for an animal.
He said something about his shank and his hindquarters.
Grab him by the tenderloin. He's like, where is that?
Yeah.
And
He goes,
he's like,
just say arms and legs. It's a vernacular I'm
comfortable with. And so that's
Hoist
happening.
the shank. Hoist the shank.
While that's happening, then backwards, Stanley starts to slide down the stairs and his head puts a hole in the wall. And I'm telling you, that part gets me. I laughed till I heard it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that episode too. Hoist him aloft. But I thought Clark Duke played that perfectly
So
in that
well.
episode. Yeah, you could tell he was very uncomfortable.
Yes, but very willing to do whatever Dwight tells him because he wants to be.
Because he's known in the office as young Dwight.
Yeah, when he wants to move up
he
the
does.
chain. Okay, next I wanted to talk about Jim and Pam.
Okay.
So their storyline is very interesting. For one thing, I'll say I'm really glad that they deliberately stayed away from the obvious, lazy kind of couple conflict, which is another person. Mm-hmm. So the Kathy situation was just like a one episode, get out of my room. Jim was having none of it. So I'm glad that didn't turn into anything. Mm-hmm. Instead, the conflict between this couple is with him starting a new business in Philadelphia, and they had agreed he wasn't going to do it, but he does it anyway because he can't help himself. It's his idea. He wants to be part of it. Do you remember feeling how you felt the first time you saw some of these things unfold between them?
Yeah, I mean, I had a little bit of fear.
Isn't it interesting that you felt fear? I did too.
Yeah, because I was like, really, you got me for 8.5 seasons or whatever, all the way up until the end, and now, at this point, you're going to make it to where it's like icky and scary and
yeah. Well,
like
on one hand, you kind of expect there to be tension somehow. There's got to be some kind of conflict or tension, and like I said, they didn't rely on the third party, whatever, because that was not them. But every couple goes through seasons, of ups and downs. It's not always roses and rainbows. And so I like that they had this conflict, but, it humanized them. However, things got scary for me, first of all, when at the opening of season 9, they were like, and that was our summer. Mm-hmm. And so they start taking their mic packs off. And she's like, don't you have everything you need? I mean, it's just a paper company.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't think anything exciting is going to happen for us
a long
for
time.
a long, long time. And then the look on Jim's face
Yeah,
I
you
remember feeling scared.
Yeah, I was like, oh, something's up. Dang it, something's up. I did too. That's kind of where it started for me
I
too.
felt scared.
But I think through all that, I mean, or I'm sorry, did you have more about?
No,
I just think through all that, the way they wrote it was what we thought was the case ended up being the case, in that their love was so strong that they were able to get through, some of those scary moments and some of that tension.
They were. And I want to talk about more why it was scary as a viewer, because we knew all this time that this crew was creating a documentary. But this season is when we got to see things we had never seen before.
Got to see the other side of the wall.
The wall came down, and that frightened me because it became real, and I became really afraid for where their relationship was headed, and I thought that was, I think that's a testament to the show itself and how they chose to, because they could have broken down bits and pieces of the wall here and there over 9 seasons, but they never really did. And so when it finally happened and it was involving Jim and Pam, I felt uncertain and scared, like I was one of their children and this can't happen.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. I did too.
But what really got me was when Pam and Jim are fighting about the recital, because she was supposed to record it and things went wrong. And he's like, that moment's gone. It's like, maybe you should have been here. And so what they've been bottling up kind of came out in that phone call. And she hangs up the phone and she buries her head in her face and is crying. And then she looks up at nobody and suddenly says, "What am I doing wrong, Brian?" And I was like, who the hell's Brian?
Yeah, who's Brian? Wait a minute.
Do you remember feeling like that?
I did. And then they showed him. Then they showed the boom guy.
And he's holding that boom mic. And he's like, "Guys," and he tells them to cut the camera, and he's consoling her. And I was like, shit just got real. Mm-hmm. That was tough.
Yeah, as a viewer, you spend all those years like expecting certain things, and then it just literally just threw us all for what the hell just happened?
What just happened?
Just showed a boom guy from the mockumentary crew or the documentary crew.
Like we know how important the camera is itself to tell the story, but it's almost like we forget that there are people behind those cameras. And until that point, I was completely immersed and not thinking at all about the relationships that had probably been fostered through that experience. And so to learn that Jim and Pam had become close with Brian and his wife over the years, really, it was like a jaw-dropping, holy shit. Made me really nervous, like, what's going to happen? But I do have to call a little bullshit. And if you did you listen to Office Ladies about the AARM, their most recent?
If it was within the last week, I haven't.
Okay, well,
I'm pretty up to speed up until that.
I don't feel bad about saying this publicly because even Jenna Fisher admitted this very thing, and I've always wanted to call bullshit a little bit on their relationship during this spell, because they've always been so in sync, and they've never really had a problem. Well, I guess I can't say that now that I think about it. It did take them years to get together and admit their feelings to each other. So maybe I'm wrong on that. But at this age and this stage in their life, they have a home, they have kids. You know how life, like, you grow up real fast. And I just cannot believe that these two are still so immature that they cannot communicate with each other. So him doing this without, them being on the same page, that's one thing. Her telling him sooner, I don't want that life, if she had just said it. And they started going to counseling because of it. I just feel like something doesn't ring true for me about them not communicating these things. And also, I have to call bullshit on the fact that Pam was not willing. She wasn't willing to move 2 hours away. But suddenly she's willing to move to Austin, which is like a 25-hour drive away.
Is Jenna Fisher saying this on the podcast?
She didn't say that part. That's always been a beef for me, is that, why at the end? It's a good ending. We love that their characters are moving forward in their life, because we knew from the start that Jim was meant for better things. we also knew, I think he's right when he says, if I didn't push Pam, she'd be married to Roy. So I agree. And I'm not advocating necessarily for Jim doing all these things without her being on board. But she didn't communicate clearly what she wanted either. I just think it's weird, though. I think it's weird at the end that suddenly Austin's okay with her, but Philly wasn't.
Well, I think because when the Philly stuff was going on, she was still too scared to just jump right into it, like to trust Jim with that endeavor. Like she wasn't 100% sold that it was going to work. So she didn't want to just move really anywhere. I don't know if it mattered that it was Philly, but I just don't think I think she was scared enough and she didn't trust that it was going to be a success. At the end, when obviously she figured out that, they got a buyout, Daryl was, it was a big deal. I think that was her moment to be like, you know what? I do trust this guy and what he's trying to do for us. I'm all in. Like it's going.
She does say
it's
to
going
him,
to work.
I believe in you.
Yeah. So I think it's like her light bulb moment to say this is going to work. So wherever it has to work, I'm there. So I think that's why the shift, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think at first she was just too scared. It was too new, and she wasn't 100% sold on the idea that it was going to work.
Okay. That's fair. I think I might disagree a little bit in that when she goes down there with Daryl and sees that it's like, this is a real thing. This is an actual, like Daryl said, you got a real Facebook vibe going. She expected a rinky-dink office, and I don't know. And plus, for her not to have faith in Jim all of a sudden, but
that part's true. I get that.
Yeah.
The faith in him. But, he lost the Bridgeport Capital, so I think she was just a little scared that it wasn't working the way he mapped it out in his mind.
True. If you're going to uproot your family, even just 2 hours away, it's got to be that's a bet she wasn't willing to take just yet. So yes. I get that.
Yep.
I get that. But she calls herself out for that AARM episode where she's being way too obvious about her feelings. She storms out of the room and she's like, I'm scared that I'm not, she criticizes her own acting, saying that she's being way too obvious and she's embarrassed by it. And I can see why. But ultimately, she doesn't like how it's treated like I made this decision. Jim saying I decided this. It's what I wanted, and she's like, this couple needs to be on that level where you're like, we decided this, so that later, like every couple, when you have a compromise, you have to be able to say, okay, this is something we're both deciding, because later you can't go to that person and say, this is what you wanted. Mm-hmm. If things don't go well, you have to both be on board. Mm-hmm. And so for them to not be, and I don't know, that part, I didn't care for, but I was happy with their ending.
Okay. I could get down with that. Makes sense.
And then I thought we jumped to basically the last 2 episodes, which are both 2-parters.
Well, before we do that, are there any like LOL moments in those?
In the Jim and Pam storyline, not.
Well, no, not that. I'm just saying, like, because we talked about the Andy or the Robert California, some of the funny parts. But is there any just in general?
Well, obviously the hotel prank, the bed bugs, Stairmageddon.
Okay, so you already did reference a few.
Yeah. What about you?
Garden party. I freaking loved the garden party.
Oh my gosh, garden party!
I thought that was classic. I thought that was actually Jim's best prank.
That is such a great prank.
What was the name he used for that book that he got Dwight to buy? James Trickington.
Yes.
Obviously, for me, I laugh hysterically every time I watch it. Was when Dwight finally got his black belt, and he does his final kata forms in the office. So classic.
That's a great episode.
Yeah, so if you're a Sopranos fan, Michael Imperioli is the sensei, and I thought he did a great job. And I laugh. And you can see Andy Buckley, David Wallace, the character David Wallace.
Yeah.
You can see him in the background breaking.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to check that out.
Watch it when Dwight hands him the scissors, and he goes, yeah! Andy Buckley is laughing.
That is funny. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, and I think I even see the back of Mindy Kaling. I think she's like, or no, she wasn't in that one. There was somebody that you could see the back of, and they're laughing. But anyway,
Andy Buckley is not one who breaks.
He's not one who breaks, but he broke.
That's funny.
When he hands him the scissors, like real formally, it's so funny.
I would think the part would be with him thrusting his hip towards him. He's like, I can't do it if you're going to be thrusting.
Right. But I thought Michael Imperioli did that part really well. But yeah, he's like, Sensei, you watching? Watch this. But I love the way Dwight acted in that scene. The Halloween episode where Here Comes Trouble comes, I think that was a really funny episode. The Gettysburg episode I thought was really good. When Gabe acts like Abe Lincoln and Oscar and Dwight kind of get down to the facts about the Battle of Shroot Farms. And
Poor Dwight.
Yeah.
He learns what the battle at Shroot Farms is really about.
And the last two I absolutely freaking loved was the Dwight Christmas, the Belschnickel.
Oh, that's a great one.
The Belschnickel. And he's like, so like, let me get this straight. So you had a list. You checked it more than once. You're like, yep, I checked it more than once.
To find out if you're impish or,
Yeah. He goes, and then Kevin goes, what is ba? It's hog, mama. So I love the Dwight Christmas episode. And
that's also another point of Jim and Dwight, becoming friends.
Yeah.
Like Jim's gone. He left the party early to get to
and Dwight's
Philly.
down about it.
And Dwight's depressed. And he's sitting across from Pam, and she's sad. And she's like, I miss him too. And he's like, I don't miss him, whatever.
Yeah.
And then when Jim walks back in,
And Dwight runs and gets him a hug.
intercepts their hug.
Yeah.
And is so excited to see him back.
Yeah. So I really liked that one.
Me too.
And then the last one was Dwight's bachelor party.
Oh, that's so fun.
And that was really sweet, kind of to see after all these years of pranks, they were all good pranks.
Good
And
pranks.
it was really where I felt in my heart, I was like, Jim and Dwight are close.
Oh, man. I mean, this relationship has been growing and growing over time. And I did mention in the last episode, I said, the more Dwight lets people in, the more his natural leadership ability, thrives. And we're right at the point where he becomes manager and you cheer for him. Like, I don't think as a viewer, you don't really want him to be manager because he's nuts.
Right.
But by the time he is ready to become manager, everyone's cheering for him and happy for him.
And they all know he loves that place more than anything on this planet.
Exactly. And so that is such a beautiful moment. And by that point, Jim's so supportive of him. Yeah, I would have to agree.
And then they had the cigars and they get out of the limo and he goes, Bazooka, you remembered? He's like, of course I did.
Yes.
Like, it was just amazing. I like that part.
Guten Prank.
Yeah.
So the good pranks during the bachelor party, you're right. Those were beautiful.
Yep.
And
so yeah, those are mine.
Oh, yes, those are good. Well, I love the Dwight and Angela storyline.
Yeah, they really grew, both of them together.
They did. And I don't know, like, you see him trying to move on with this Esther person who's young and
the
beautiful.
milkmaid.
The milkmaid. She's young and beautiful. But then Angela's marriage falls apart. She's really struggling, ends up moving in with Oscar, which I love. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that they live together and they're co-parenting together. That's a really cute dynamic that I'm happy about.
It's tastefully appointed, like most stereotype gay homes.
Yes.
I like that part.
And that's a beautiful moment, too, of, when
He thinks she's saying, and crying and saying, I love the senator, and it was really Dwight.
Yeah, but even before then, when she grabs his hand, when he
yeah,
offers,
yeah.
he was like, you're not going to live in a tent.
He sees her searching online for tents and stuff.
And she grabs his hand. And so, because they've gone back and forth, and they have had some real big issues with this love triangle. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I just love that once they bring Philip into the office, because they've already done a paternity test. The doctor, I'm assuming, we assume she paid the doctor to give the wrong result. And so Dwight lets go of that dream that it might be his child. But when Philip's in the office, Dwight can't help but see the Schrute in him. Do you remember some of those moments?
Yeah, it's like when he's looking at the Galactica.
Yeah.
When he picks the beat over the money or whatever it was, and so he's seeing.
And he likes he eats the same kind of paper I do.
The 24 weight letter bond or whatever it was. Yeah, so he's seen some physical characteristics that are making him think he's a Schrute, the big wide eyes and the big head and all this and that. So not only that, but some of the personality traits that he's seeing.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's the only part I didn't like about it was, as a father, don't make that dude think, don't let that kid grow up to that age that he was and not let the dad know that he's the dad.
That's what I was
that part kind of bothered
Yeah.
me. You know, he's your son, and I'm like, come on, don't do that to the guy.
That was the only thing the only beef I have with that part of the story is that when he pulls over and the proposal, it's great. Just minutes before, he had said to Angela, if he's my son, he deserves everything that's entitled to him, this farm, my fortune, and you'll be compensated with a marriage. And
she's like, he's not your son.
And she lights up. Her face lights up. And I think that gives Dwight hope and courage to eventually propose to her. But she's like, but he's not your son. And I get where she's coming from because she says, I wanted you to marry me because you want to marry me, not because, you want Philip to be raised a certain way. I get that, but...
Under rigorous Shroot traditions.
Yes, exactly. But the fact that she says, I lied to you, he's your son, and he's so excited... You have to go, wait a minute. How would he not be pissed that so much time has passed? So that one's hard for me.
I would be pissed.
But I get where she's coming from.
Because that was like a full year almost?
Yeah.
Where he's not in his own son's life, and he could have been very easily.
Right. But I get that she wanted his love for her to be part of the deal.
Yeah.
So I get it. But yeah, you're right. Would any father be like, oh, no big deal?
Yeah, I struggled with that one.
Be excited, yeah. I did wish for a better ending for Toby.
Yeah, poor fella.
Man.
He just gets shit on the entire show.
You would
from beginning to end.
You would think that after Michael Scott leaves, they would ease up. But they didn't.
No. That dude has no friends. He gets fired. They don't even want to be around him when he comes back for the panel interview. Like they don't even want to be in a limo with him or a taxi with him.
I know. What is up with that?
Yeah, poor guy. He sadly talks about moving to New York and writing a novel, and he's got roommates that are better than friends or whatever.
They're better than friends because they have to give you notice before they leave.
Damn, man. It's almost like he's like Michael Scott.
I know.
You know
I just don't understand the justification for that because it was really Michael's problem with him. Everyone else,
Yeah, the only solid they gave him was they're leaving the wedding. They're like, come on, Toby, come to the after party. And he's like, and they're like, come on, Tobe. That's literally the only friendliness they gave him.
Yeah.
It seemed like towards the end.
So that bothered me. I think Toby deserved better. And apparently there are some deleted scenes between he and Nellie. And I think originally they were hoping that would turn into a love story.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have minded that. He deserves happiness, and I don't know. He's a good guy.
Nellie, I'm so sick of February. When he's drinking at the water cooler.
I know. And when he thinks they're a couple, but they're not. Okay. I'm ready to go to the greatest moment of the entire series. We talked about Jim's pranks, and it's all leading up to this one final prank. Mm-hmm. I think the way that they choreographed this moment was so friggin' perfect. Mm-hmm. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
Michael Scott comes back for the wedding, right?
It's one thing to bring back the characters we love, which they did. It's another thing to do it the way they did it. First of all, they did the right thing by not making Steve Carell the star of the show, because by that point, the characters had developed and it made sense for him to be in it for the amount of time and to say what he said. But the fact that Jim and Dwight are having this moment just before the ceremony and he says, I'm sorry, I can't be your best man because I'm older than you or something like that. Or you're older than me.
Some kind of
the best man has to be older than you. And he's like, well, I'm not that much older than you. Whatever.
He's like, and you're clearly older than me or something like that.
He's like, well, but when he says,
he just says I'm sorry, I can't be there for you. I can't be your bestest mensch. He goes, I just wish there was something I could do.
I wish there was something I could do. And the camera pans over.
But the way Jim looks over, I didn't really know what was going on.
Jim's eyes lead the camera over.
I didn't even know what was going to happen.
I didn't expect it.
But when he made that facial expression where the camera panned over, I was like, oh, it's going to be Michael. That's the first time it was click for me.
Dude, I did not see it coming. I mean, usually when stars leave a show, they leave a show. Mm-hmm. I never imagined we'd get that kind of gift.
Yeah, it was
And so when
really,
the camera
really good.
pans over and it's him, and he's just quiet, and it made me audibly gasp. I went, and didn't it feel like you were seeing a beloved family member
Yeah.
that you hadn't seen in years?
Yeah.
And so Dwight has the same reaction, and he says, "I can't believe you came." And Michael Scott says,
That's what she said. And he's like breaking
He's
a little bit when he
choked
says
up.
it. But then in the background when Jim goes, Goonton Pronk number, or no, he goes, best prank ever.
best
But you
prank
can
ever.
see Dwight and Michael back there kind of giving each other like jabs and like,
Yeah.
they're like catching up.
it is.
They're catching up with each other.
Oh, that
it's
moment
a
gives
cool
me
moment.
chills. And it never gets old. As many times as we've seen the show, it never gets old.
Never gets old.
And I love that. Like I said, they don't make it all about him, but you can see him dancing on, dancing
Yeah, they
at
just
the
gave him a couple
reception.
lines, maybe 2 or 3 lines.
And then he's showing his pictures to Pam, and then he says, "It's like all your children grew up and married each other. It's every parent's dream."
Yeah,
It was just enough, and I just thought it was so special the way they did it.
But even when he's showing Pam the pictures and stuff, they let Pam do
Narrate.
narrate what was going on and stuff. So it was really
That was
cool.
so tastefully
Yeah.
done and such a treat.
Gee, I wonder why. Who did we say was the showrunner in season 9? Oh yeah, Greg Daniels.
That's right. He
Yep.
came back to run the
Yeah.
show. Excellent.
Yeah, good call. Great call.
And so I just say, in general, I think it's one of the finest finales of all time.
I agree.
Even if we have moments where we're like, we call BS, even when the storyline, it does feel like they're kind of speeding things up. The panel was great.
The panel was great.
Erin's
Erin got to meet her
parents,
parents.
beautiful.
Yeah, and then we finally got to see the actual Schrute wedding that Dwight talked about, like in season 2 or 3,
Where they're standing in
yeah,
their
they're
own
standing
graves.
there. So it's like everything just kind of came together. Stanley comes back, and him and Phyllis have that moment where they
Yes.
they say they missed each other. So
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then they end up in the office, and Creed plays that beautiful song. And actually, when they filmed that final part in the parking lot, as if I recall correctly, they didn't tell them that this was the last scene.
yeah, I think you're right. I think I heard
And
that.
so after they yelled cut, they were like, "That's a wrap on The Office."
Yeah.
And everyone just fell apart.
Yeah, but even like Creed's song, like I had heard in their podcast where, during the read through, he was like showing them what the song was going to be. And then, but when they did it in the actual episode, like, that those reactions are genuine.
So
Yeah, like
genuine.
you can tell they're trying not to like just break down completely.
Yeah.
Phyllis is kind of breaking, Jim and Pam, or, John and Jenna as Jim and
Oh,
Pam.
and they
are-
have that talk with Dwight about moving, and
Yeah.
Dwight gives him severance for all that time. And it's just, I mean, ordinarily they say that it's, when you're a writer, you're kind of married to that, and any deviation from it, no one wants their art messed with. I get it. But I know that in TV, when it comes to series, writers tend to be very unwilling to give the audience what they want. Mm-hmm. It's I guess frowned upon as sort of a cheesy, lame, way to do things, and it's higher art, as if it's higher art to make some stories go a completely different direction than expected. You subvert expectations, yada yada. But I love when shows give the viewers what we deserve, and we deserved all those beautiful moments. I think.
Yeah, I thought it was, I'm with you. I think it was the best finale I'd probably ever seen.
I think it's the right way to do it.
Yep.
And my favorite line from the entire series.
I already know what you're going to say.
Last episode, I mentioned Pam. Pam's journey is one of my favorite parts about the show because it takes courage. It takes so much courage to say what you want and to go after what you want, to be assertive and to be your own advocate. And Pam learns that lesson the hard way. But I love watching it, and I love seeing what she ends up being. She's kind of the mom of the office, and so for her to be the last one to speak, and for the camera to sort of zoom in on her oil painting of the office, and she's like, I thought it was weird when you first chose us, a paper company, for this, but she's like, there's a lot of beauty in ordinary things. Isn't that kind of the point? And it's like, every time, brother, it makes me tear up.
Or Andy says, don't you wish you knew that you were in the good old days before you left them?
Yeah,
that
while
kind of
you're in them,
Yeah,
yeah.
while you're in them. Yeah,
It's
I like how they did that.
It hits home for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. So,
and it's a good reminder to enjoy.
soak it in.
Soak it
in
in.
the experience that you're having.
Exactly.
Yeah, be in the moment.
Be in the moment and to see the beauty in ordinary things, because this series was about an ordinary office, ordinary people, an ordinary job. Nearly everybody on earth can relate to that. And life is beautiful, no matter how ordinary.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Well said.
Thank you. And I
was so
really-
excited to do this.
I was too.
We've always wanted to talk about this show.
We have, and I hope that we've done it justice. I hope people will be inspired to watch it after listening to us. I feel bad, like I said last time, about spoilers, but at this point...
You're right. At this point, if you haven't seen it.
I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm really glad we finally got a chance to talk about it, get some things off our chest, because you carry these things with you.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you watch the show, you carry it with you, and it was just fun to talk about with you.
Me too. And I think I'm going to go rewatch it again.
I think I might have
I'm inspired.
to. I think I might have to.
I'm going to stare at my Christmas tree for a second first, but then I'm going to watch it.
Yes, let's close out by staring at the Christmas tree,
Right,
shall we?
right, yeah.
Let's get the fire crackling.
Okay, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to another piece of the Gen X experience worth saving. This conversation, our second half of the love letter to The Office, has now been immortalized in the annals of history. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the Best of Gen X wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Joe, always a pleasure.
Duh.